Hello everyone, my name is Angela and I want to thank you for joining me for a brief presentation on the Dick and Carey model of instructional design. There are several models of instructional design. The Dick and Carey model was developed by Walter Dick, Lou Carey, and husband James Carey in 1978. It is a comprehensive design process used to plan, design, implement, and evaluate instruction using 10 components, which we will take a look at later. The DC model is most popular in educational environments. Here are two research uses I located using the Dick and Carey ID model. You can take a look at these in depth further if you would like at any time. But each was used to evaluate the effectiveness of using the DC model. The very first one was from a technical school in Nigeria where the performance and differences of students taught under the guidance of using the DC model versus those who were not were evaluated. The results of that study suggested that teachers should embark on using the DC model when designing instruction. And also the National Commission for College Education should consider the model as actually for a standard of guiding teachers in planning instruction. The other study here was used in web-based learning environments. It discussed the conflicts of using the DC model in web-based planning. The conclusion of that study indicated that conflicts were found, however, that the DC model could be used effectively as long as the adaptability process is considered. Here we have the Dick and Carey design model, and I'll go ahead and explain those briefly. Stage one is identify instructional goals. Stage 2, you want to conduct an instructional analysis. So when a need or a goal is identified, tie it back to why the goal was chosen. Likely that's because a task or performance goal was not being met. This is something that the learner does need to learn to perform it effectively and efficiently. Then you want to identify entry behaviors. Identifying entry behaviors says asking questions like, what does the learner already know related to the stated goal or need or performance gap? What is the demographic of the learner? Who will be participating in that class or training session? Is it a PhD student, a seasoned instructor, a new instructor? Is the person proficient in the use of computers? Then you want to write performance objectives that will allow the learner to successfully complete and perform whatever the goal is stated. You want to assess the learner. That could be using pre-test, post-test. You want to develop instructional strategies. What learning activities are going to be used? Then you want to develop and select instructional materials. Identify the content that supports the strategy that you chose. In the Dick and Carey model, the formative evaluation usually consists of like group and one-to-one. And then you want to design and conduct a summative evaluation, which, really focuses on identifying if, what the intended outcome was achieved. And then you want to continue with that evaluation and revise accordingly. Now, for my how-to, I used how to access Moodle and make courses visible to students. I consistently encountered this as an issue in my previous job. So my identified instructional goal was learners will proficiently operate Moodle to access proper Moodle settings to unhide a course, making the course visible in a stated time for students. The performance gap I identified is that instructors were not accessing Moodle courses to make the courses available to students, and primarily because they just didn't know how. The performance objectives, first we want to identify learning the demographics. And here they ranged. They were new and seasoned instructors, more of which they were just not motivated using a computer nor were they motivated in using the learning management system. They always wanted to revert back to, traditional ways of accessing content and delivering content. The performance objectives I identified were in identifying, locating the edit settings, manipulating those settings, and the learner should also identify 2 additional alternate locations of edit settings within Moodle. Learners should be able to select appropriate settings to make the course visible and explore additional settings which correspond to satisfactory course delivery. Learners should correctly choose equivalent actions demonstrated to save those settings or other performed action. The instructional strategies were utilizing visual, written, and oral instruction. The assessments included entry skills tests, pre-test, post-test. The instructional materials were interactive Moodle playgrounds, study guides, and train-the-trainer sessions. For formative evaluations, the instructional designer served as the content specialist because they knew and were knowledgeable about the target learner and the content. The instructor would also go ahead and choose 3 to 5 learners from the target group and take the individuals through the program and use observation, interview, pre- and post-test materials to examine the instruction. And they'll be given the opportunity to review the pre- and post-tests and provide feedback. Now, my summative evaluation was to revise based on that feedback from the learner, the ID, and observer of the training course. I really chose the DC model because it was challenging for me when I was studying it. Once I learned it, it was awesome, and it stepped me up to another level in designing instruction. Thank you so much for tuning into my presentation. Have a wonderful day.